Got an update on our 2007 6.0 Power Stroke diesel with no base oil pressure. Pretty self-explanatory. I've never seen one that bad, but yeah, that was going on for a little while. So pulled the pan off. Of course, what needles didn't go through the oil pump were laying in the bottom of the pan. It's a couple 100,000 miles on this thing. I wasn't expecting a lot. I thought we were going to be a lot worse off than we actually are. But the crankshaft, she's a beauty. That's a stain there, is all that is. I mean, Jesus, it's all the main journals and the crank pins, you know, the rod journals, they look nice. I'll stick a mic on it. You know, we're going to measure it 3 places. But we'll check it with a micrometer. You know, probably quick polish on that, and that's one of the nicest crankshafts I've seen in a while on one of these. So the bearings did their job, you know, the embeddability and all that stuff. So the only issue with this one is we've got, you know, this is the original bore, this part right here where the staining is, and I cleaned as much of that off as I could. I just kind of wanted to get a ballpark idea of what we were looking at here. From the original bore down to dropping down where the transition is here, we've got about 12 thousandths wear in the top of the cylinder. So obviously that's not going to work, and they're pretty shiny. We've had a blown EGR cooler. This is the passenger bank where we had coolant getting into there, so it's stained pretty good. So we've got the block all stripped down. We're gonna knock the cam bearings out of it up there and bolt the bed plate on, get it down to Hans, and have him, you know, hopefully 20s. I'm sure we can get away with 20 over on the cylinders, and he'll tank it, and we'll, you know, blow out the oil galleries and all that crap. We'll get all this cleaned up, and we'll put it back together. Talk to the customer, and you know, he got the truck cheap enough to where you know, let's do it. Let's build a good engine for it, and that'll last a long time, and get some value there. So she leaked oil everywhere. She's pretty greasy. But anyway, so we got this one going on. Got the one the other day, came in on a pallet. We got all kinds of, you know, all manner of aftermarket cylinder heads, O-ringed, and up pipes, and intake manifolds, and got some exhaust manifolds coming. And you know, we're gonna do this one here doesn't have a lot of wear in it, so it's a little rusty. I guess it sat in their shop for a little while, but yeah, we might be able to get away with going 10 over on this one if we can find pistons. And I'm sure the crank is beautiful in this. This was Grandpa's truck, so other than some oil leaks, it blew a head gasket, so that's why they took it out, took it apart. Why not? And apparently money's no object, because we got, you know, got all kinds of boxes of aftermarket stuff. So we're going to be doing that. That'll be fun. This will be real fun, because we're going to build this thing up. It'll be drop-in ready. You know, turbo, everything's going to be mounted to it. They can drop it in, and I'll have it all primed up, have the high pressure oil system all bled out. So once they get fuel pressure and maybe a teeny bit of air in the high pressure oil system, they'll be able to fire it right up and run it. So make it easier for them, because I know these things, you know, some people, if you don't work on these all the time, you know, you can burn a starter up real easy on them, trying to get them started, trying to get the air purged out of them. So you know, once you've had that high pressure oil system apart. So, but it's pretty standard practice for me. Anytime I have one apart, before I put it in, I'm going to toss a starter on there, throw a couple batteries on it, and you know, with the glow plugs out, and spin that thing over until I've got all the air bled out of the oil system and the high pressure oil system. So, because you'll get air in the low pressure oil system too. You want to spin that thing long enough to spit all that air out, because that it's going a lot of places, a lot of air in there. So got our Godzilla project going on here. Godzilla is going in this. Gonna go in there. We got some wiring going on. We got this is a 2023, and the PCM is a 2023. It's been tuned, but We're putting together a wiring harness on it. 2023 is going to have a body control module that controls certain functions, so we're going to have to do a little bit of voodoo magic, but it's quite possible and, you know, doable, we'll put it that way. So this is going to be a lot of fun to do too. So we're a little bit behind on this, but we did do a camshaft lifters and timing in this thing, and what else did we do to it? We put some Johnson lifters in. I have a bunch of footage. I'll post it all up on one of these days. Get together and get it together and get it on there. But life's good. So since recently, this is the second lifter failure, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. We're looking at the bottom side of this 6.0. So the camshaft sits up in here, you know, it's exposed, and there's your lifter bores right there, and right there, and right there. Those are our oil squirters, or piston cooling jets, whatever you want to call them. And they put out, you know, it's a metered amount of oil, but they're spraying oil. That's hitting the crankshaft, and of course the crankshaft is slinging oil up on the cam and the lifters, and plus you're having a little bit of oil bleeding out around the lifter bore here, you know, so you've got a lot of oil up in here. So oiling is not an issue on these. Oiling the rollers and the camshaft, that's not an issue. Plus you're going to have, especially with bearings that look like that, you're going to have a fair amount of leakage going around the camshaft too. And these things they move a tremendous amount of oil. They have a huge oil pump on them, so heavy volume of oil. So you know, you need that when you've got this much going on. I mean, we're using oil to drive the injectors. We have to keep the oil cooler full. We got to keep the reservoir full up there on top, you know, to feed the high pressure oil pump. So, you know, it just moves a lot of oil. So oiling is not the issue with your lifter failure. In the case of this one, I'm gonna say it was probably maybe a little bit of lack of maintenance, because this thing it's pretty black inside. It's not as bad as some I've seen, but like on the crankshaft there, we had stain in between the rod bearings, and I can rub that off, you know, to clean it, take some cleaner to clean that right off. Well, that staining is oil residue, and you can see the oil residue in the bottom of the cylinder there. You got your skirts that drop down here, and that's why that's clean. And then you have this area here that nothing's touching when the piston hits bottom there. So pretty dirty inside. I mean, that's naturally going to contribute to it, you know, the quality of the oil, or the cleanliness of the oil is going to contribute to that. But since this has over, I think it was over 200,000 miles. I can't remember the exact number, but you know, maybe a little bit of poor maintenance and just, you know, a worn out part. You know, something's got to give here. You know, I mean, those rollers aren't going to last forever, and internal needle failure is what I'm going to call it. You know, where they start skipping and maybe one of them goes away, and you know, pretty soon you breaks in half, and because there's, you know, a lot of force on them, and then they start falling out, then they start locking up and skidding on the camshaft, wearing the camshaft out. So I don't really see this as a real big problem, but you know, it might not be a bad idea. You know, they say, oh, don't put, you know, we're talking roller lifters here, not flat tappets. And if you have a good clean camshaft, yeah, they'll burnish to one another. You know, they'll have a certain wear pattern in them, but I've done lots of lifters, you know, replace the lifters when you're doing a head gasket job, you know, on a higher mileage engine. And then, you know, hopefully you don't have to worry about it. Probably not a bad idea. But there is a break-in procedure on them too when you do a new cam and lifters. You know, those things are going to burnish to each other, and so you want to throw as much oil, just like a flat tappet. I mean, it's not as critical, but it's still important. You want to make sure you're throwing that oil up there. So you know, maybe run the RPMs up to 1100 or so, and you know, let it run for, you know, 15-20 minutes so that, you know, that happens. And then when you do, you know, on new rings, you don't want to hold a steady state RPM, so you want to vary the RPM. So probably just by doing that, you're gonna give that thing, sling enough oil up on that thing to so that they can kind of wear into each other. So it's not nearly as critical as it is on a flat tappet, but who does that anymore? So I guess that doesn't really matter. But anyway, that's just another thing to think about on these roller cam failures. This one here I'm just going to attribute to maybe a lack of maintenance a little bit, and just high mileage. It just happens. I only seem to see them on higher mileage engines, on these 6.0s anyway. I'm sure there's exceptions to that, but as long as I've been working on them, all the ones that I've seen fail have been on high mileage engines. So I don't think it's that big a concern, other than if you have a high mileage engine, you might consider throwing a set of lifters in it just to keep all of this from happening. I mean, this thing's, she's plumb wore out, so something, if the lifter wouldn't have failed, it'd still be leaking oil all over the place, and maybe running good, but it failed a lifter, so now we're doing all this anyway. So yeah, there you go.